There's Lee.
I have the air on, Lee.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi, Lee.
Hey. Great night. Should be a short meeting, right, Kathy?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Kathy, do you want to start with your moderator script?
I'm not done doing my background chores. Hang on.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay,
Oh,
now we're recording. Yes. The June 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is about to convene as a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. All town buildings are closed to the public, and this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kathy Williams, and I am the town planner. I'll be serving as your moderator for this virtual meeting. I'll now turn it over to the planning board chairman.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Tom Roach, and I serve as chairman of the Yarmouth Planning Board. I will begin by taking a roll call for a quorum. Brad Goodwin,
Present.
Chris Vincent, Liz Hartsgrove,
Present.
Lee Rowley,
present.
Joanne Crowley,
Present.
Tom Barron.
Present.
With the quorum, I will call the meeting to order and ask the moderator to explain the remote participation before proceeding.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 23rd order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the order. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching this virtual meeting or the live feed on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel. You may also listen to the meeting by dialing in to the number provided on the notice of the meeting. We will also post a recording of this meeting on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel as soon as we are able. Please be patient as we work to overcome any technical challenges with the virtual meetings. For all meetings, to reduce confusion during the meeting, all audience participants should be muted until called upon by the speaker or the chairman or the moderator. All votes must be roll call votes. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself and do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices when speaking. For applicants and presenters, applicants can use the raise hand button or press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair. The moderator will unmute applicants when they are called upon to speak during their portion of the agenda. Applicants shall also identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation. Public comment. None of the items on the agenda this evening are public hearings that require a designated public comment period. But public comment can be taken at the discretion of the chairman. I don't see anybody else here, but members of the public may request to speak by raising their hand or pressing *9 on their phone, or alternatively, they can do it via the chat function. To do this, click on the chat icon and type your message. When prompted, the moderator will read comments and questions into the record. Member of the public recognized by the chair asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the record. I will now hand the meeting back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Kathy. The first item on our agenda is the approval not required A&R Plan 1142F. Joan Gonzalez, 15 Oak Hill Lane, South Yarmouth. South Yarmouth map, assessor map 119, parcel 8, R40 zoning district. The A&R plan divides the existing lot into 2 lots. Representing the applicant is Dan Ojala from Down Cape Engineering. Dan, would you like to take from there and identify yourself for the record?
Sure. Do you have me verbally?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer from Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouth Port, and helping Joan out with a fairly simple matter here. This is the easier under the subdivision control law. You have definitive plans which require roads and approval, and there's carved out a nice exception for lots that have frontage on approved ways. It's called the approval not required process. This one, Yarmouth has some rules which we were able to utilize to create basically a panhandle style lot. There are a number of rules which we have to meet. With an approval not required, you generally just look at frontage, but It is important to realize that these do meet zoning. So in order to do the reduced frontage, you have to have a square equal to the normally required frontage that fits inside the lot, and a line drawn from the road within the lot lines. The furthest it can be from the street is, well, there's different distances, within 500 feet in this particular zone. And so you can see that we have drawn those requisite boxes on these two lots. There's an existing dwelling here, and it's you need 40,000, and of that, or at least 40,000 has to make a shape factor of 21, and that's the perimeter square divided by the area. It keeps you from having, long, thin lots. Generally, they have to have some meat on the bones. So we've divided this one here into Lot A and Lot B. We worked with Kathy to make sure that we had thought of all the things it would need. We believe we're going to leave the driveway where it is. So we did a driveway and utility easement with meets and bounds there, so that the buyer, or eventually, if someone buys Lot B and builds on it, they'll have a proper easement. A will have a proper easement, or they'll reserve, I guess, a proper easement from Oak Hill Road up to their house. And so it's a 51,600 foot lot. Lot A is a 49,586, so they're somewhat oversized. The area within the shape does meet the 40,000 on Lot B, and the whole lot meets shape on Lot A. So there's a little bit of extra land here. You can see the frontage is on Oak Hill Lane, which is we're pretty much the end of the road at a cul-de-sac. And we'll just simply come in with the drive off of that. And this is just a little bit off of Driftwood there, Eric's Path and so forth, that area. So we feel that this does meet all the requirements for shape, area, frontage, and does, I believe that you can make a determination that does have the frontage required under the bylaw, and you can endorse the plan as approval not required under the subdivision control law. But I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Thank you. We'll go to the public. Any public comments?
Oh, hang on 1 second.
Seeing none, we'll go to the board. I'll start with you, Brad.
Dan, anytime you come before us, you always do a bang-up job. Always clean, no issues. We always have fun with you, though. Every once in a while, we catch you, but this time it was clean. And thank you for doing such a good job.
Sure, and Kathy did have some good comments, your planner there, and we've made some nice revisions that'll help everything go smoothly. Thank you, Will.
Liz, comments?
None from me. It looks good. Thank you.
You bet. Lee,
No comment.
Joanne,
No comment.
Tom?
I had an opportunity to visit the site, and I really commend Dan on putting together a very understandable and very clear plan. Thank you.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve A&R 1142F.
Is there a second?
Second.
Tom seconds it. Roll call for a vote. Brad,
Yes, I approve.
Liz,
Approve.
Lee,
Yes, approved.
Joanne?
Joanne, you're
Joanne?
muted.
You're muted.
I know.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay, no problem. Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you, Dan. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Dan, it's just going to
Yeah.
take me a little bit of a while to coordinate with Tom just to get everything signed.
Okay.
And then I'll get in touch with you about getting the Mylar to you.
Sounds good. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Okay, the next item is minutes, May 20th.
Can I ask a quick question?
You bet.
Normally, we'd slide these plans down to you
Exactly.
and you could sign them. Kathy, do you want us to drop them back off at town hall?
I do need them. I wish I had thought
Yeah.
about that before I sent that out to you. I only need 5 of them, so Tom will have one. So
Yep,
if anyone else is coming by, you can
We
just
all
put-
are. So where do you want us to leave them?
I have to go tomorrow to Hyannis, so I can drop it off, Kathy, for
yeah, you
you.
can just put it in the blue box, and I'll
Yeah.
let Mark know that they're just that they're for me. But I
Okay.
yeah, appreciate that.
no,
Thanks,
sounds
Brad.
good, good catch. Again,
Sorry to
minutes,
interrupt the
make,
minutes.
go ahead,
No, I'm sorry to interrupt the minutes. I apologize.
no problem. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion as written.
Second,
Second,
Second.
Did Lee second it?
I second.
oh, you did, okay. Again, roll call vote, Brad,
I have to abstain.
you have to abstain, is right. Liz,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Tom,
yes,
and myself, Tom, as well. Very good. Next item, Board of Appeals. Not much going on, Kathy.
No, just to kind of give you a briefing of the Irish Village did go before the Zoning Board of Appeals last Thursday. They ended up withdrawing without prejudice their relief request for the modulation of the buildings because it was not going in their favor.
Really?
Really, but they did get the variance relief with regard to the sidewalk easement, the trees, and then the extra sign, as long as it will ultimately be a new sign meeting the BCOD standards. So I am meeting tomorrow with them to kind of talk about what they could possibly do to the building in order to be in full compliance and not need zoning board of appeals relief. And then ultimately, I think that will probably involve some enclosing of those gable ends.
Yeah,
And then they'd need to go back before design review to see if they have any comments and then get amended by you guys.
yeah,
It was an interesting meeting. They were being very thoughtful and I think respectful of the work that the planning board had done on the
Sure.
BCOD, and that these standards were there for a particular reason. And in all honesty, I think the VCOD really was meant for a new development. It
Right.
wasn't meant for, nor did we want to open the door for a lot of not fully complete redevelopment of an existing building. But there was not a lot of support for that. One thing that we do need to remember in the future is that Tom Barron is also on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and he can't
Right.
vote for things recommending relief on a zoning board of appeal petition and then serve on that petition. So he had to recuse himself, which put them at somewhat of a disadvantage because there was only 4 members of the board actually listening. I was surprised they didn't want to continue it with a different board member,
I would think so, yeah.
but they didn't. They presented. So that's where that stands. So you guys might see it again.
Oh, wonderful.
I recused myself partially at the request of the
Sean.
chairman of the board. But I do, just as a side comment, I think that he had an opportunity to take advantage of a lot of information that we in the planning board had gone over, and certainly the site design review committee, the other committee as well. A lot of information which he did not call upon for the decision. So I recused myself, but I watched the whole thing, and I think that there were opportunities that were missed.
Yeah,
But that's
well,
that's my aside for the moment.
Kathy, do you think one of those issues would come up again where new development versus redesign of existing would have an issue where we'd have to have some clarification and amending?
It's a tough thing. I think
Yeah,
this
it is.
this particular project had a lot of merits to it that I think everyone saw. But to change the bylaw makes me very nervous with regard. They're very sound design principles. They're not ridiculous design principles. But I think they didn't emphasize necessarily enough during their presentation the architecture. They showed a lot of the site plan, but they didn't really get into the architecture until they got back and forth into the questions. There is structural limitations of that building that weren't really discussed until later in the meeting, which really should have been emphasized at the beginning, because if you're going to enclose those porches, you're not going to make that usable living space because you'd have to put a huge beam in there, and you'd probably have to construct new foundation for the extra load that's going down on the side. And if you enclose it in, now you're going to have an enclosed porch, which would probably result in slightly darker, light into the actual living spaces. So I think having specifics, that's why variances are allowed, because the planning board can't think of apps and write something that qualifies for every single good project. But ultimately, they didn't want to do that. I'd be a little hesitant to change it. Maybe this might be something where it's a special permit by the planning board for aesthetic things like that, for the 414.8 design standards. And it gives a little bit more flexibility to the planning board, because you guys are looking at it for the pretty, and so if you had maybe some discretion to give some leniency. I also think the bylaw itself is extremely complicated. Trying to enforce it and interpret it has been very difficult. And I think the idea was to get the best design standards possible, but I think there's more ways to just generally identify those design standards without getting into such minute specificity that is somewhat restricting. So I do think there's some things that we might be able to do to the bylaw that will make it simpler. I also think the whole process is very long. I mean, they go through design review, they go through site plan review, then they come to you. By the time I've seen it like 5 times, it just seems like maybe, it's not a case where the planning board has to do that full VCOD site plan review process. And that's up to you guys to discuss. But yeah, there are definitely some tweaks that could be done, but I'm not sure whether what they need relief on is something we should be giving up on. But there's a big difference between special permit and a variance. So that's something to think about.
No, and those are some of the issues that we discussed in our meetings. The modulation of the building that's already been constructed. It's not like new construction where you can just follow the path. Very unfortunate. It's too bad.
I think
But because of that requirement for modulation on it's the east and west elevations, right? Mostly?
it's the east and west elevations, yes. And
Okay,
then
looking
there
at
of both buildings. There's a tiny little piece in the front that doesn't quite meet it. It's like 54 feet and there's a bump out, but it's only like a little
Yeah.
3-inch
But-
bump out.
But it's primarily the, if you will, the flatness of the east and west elevations.
Yes.
So is there a possible solution?
I think that they have, the modulation, that the gable ends come out, and they might be able to enclose those because the architectural and site design standards specifically say that open porches can't be used instead of actual building modulation. So that was something that the building commissioner made note of. I think that continuing the railing all the way along just makes it look like one solid facade, front face of it. So that might be something that we can, I was going to talk to them about. And unfortunately, it means that maybe some people don't get those patios or the decks that on every single unit. Then you'd have a feeling of change.
Yeah.
One side issue that I overheard through all that discussion was the issue of sidewalks. And it went- I took my bylaw book out and I'm scouring everywhere in that book to see a definition of how sidewalks are applied to any property within the town. And the only place where sidewalks are really an issue are 28 and Route 6A. There may be some remnants of sidewalks here or there. I know there's a couple, there's one along Old Town House Path, but the idea of sidewalks is almost non-existent in the bylaws. It may be an issue that we on the planning board should consider some definition for the future. I don't know how others might feel on it, but the for that particular proposal, there was the idea of an easement for an 8-foot sidewalk behind no, a 6-foot sidewalk behind a 4-foot existing sidewalk, which is owned by the state. So that took up an awful lot of discussion that needn't have been.
Okay, any other comments?
Just one more, going back to HMOD 1, you may want to call in Paul Rummel or somebody like that who can give us some ideas coming from a building aspect of what would be a better idea. And maybe we take planning board totally out of it at some point, give it all to the zoning board. I'd hate to see somebody paying Myers Singer's son all this money to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just to get a business.
point.
I mean, those are soft costs you don't need to absorb. And Yarmouth's got enough problems already without a sewer, but that's a story for
Yeah.
Lee and everyone else going forward.
Years ago, Brad, if you recall, we talked about streamlining the permit process.
Yeah, we've done a pretty good job, but this one
Yeah,
really, I was
We're not
surprised
there
when
yet.
Kathy said that. I'm sorry. I was stunned. So I'm sorry you guys all had to go through this.
okay, committee updates, board members? Board member items?
I'll start off with a report. I wrote an email to Mary Wagon and I said, "You've been hiding in Mashpee. Do you have anything to give me?" And she gave me 4 items. There's a new design for the website concerning housing that's being considered by the town administrator's office. And a consultant has been hired to put that together. Yarmouth Commons is investigating establishing an on-site smoking area for tenants. The complex is now 100% occupied. Yarmouth Gardens is now owned by Commonwealth Community Developers. And they're working with the gas company to shut off all 3 gas lines into the property so demolition can begin. New construction is scheduled to start in August. And the last item is the Yarmouth Buy Down program is active and is currently working with 3 qualified income eligible households selected by lottery to buy down homes at an affordable price. The buy down averages $120,000 per home. The homes must be in good quality and deed restricted, affordable in perpetuity. So housing is moving ahead, even though we haven't seen hide and hair of Mary very much. But
Neither have I.
yeah, so there's been some activity. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Any other board member items?
Sorry, as we mentioned before the official meeting started, last night at the Board of Selectmen, there was the operating budget and the capital budget, capital plan were on the agenda. And again, we reviewed what the committee had approved and presented to the board on February 25th. My understanding is that those projects, as well as the appropriation from the tax levy for roadway and sewer, not the big sewer, little sewers, will be held in abeyance. There's not going to be anything on the annual town meeting warrant. It'll be on Article 8, it'll be a 0. There will be no funding identified, except for some free cash items that are associated with revenue producing activities such as the ambulance fund, water, any enterprise fund that produces enough revenue to cover those projects they wanted to complete. So that's what will appear on the town warrant. They will be revisiting, meaning the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator will be revisiting in the fall, possibly at fall town meeting, if there is some improvement in the revenue projections, to reconsider adding back some additional items as they see fit. So that's where we are for annual town meeting and the capital budget process.
So Georgia
you, Joy.
Lair's $1 million a year for roads.
Actually, it's 1.5, Brad.
So that got cut?
It's 1.3 for roadway and then another 250,000 or so for all of the work they do for sewer cleanouts and the like. And
Drainage.
they will not go forward with an appropriation from the tax levy for that. I will say, though, that there is, in my opinion, a fair amount of money unused from the Chapter 91 allocation that we get from the state, as well as last year, the appropriation from last year. If you were to look at the balance of accounts, and come June 30th, they will, and that appropriation continues. It doesn't drop dead. So they can continue to draw from prior appropriations. They will have a paving program for this year of some kind. Jeff has been, I think, smartly, judiciously looking at those funding sources and realizing that they could be suspended. But there are some funds available to continue some of the important paving projects he's got scheduled for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Correspondence, Kathy?
Just the things I've been sending you, nothing major.
Staff updates?
I actually have some staff updates. The Board of Selectmen last night did approve the warrant, and the annual town meeting of June 22nd will be held at Matakey's with some form of social distancing. And it's going to start at 6 p.m., Brad.
Oh, wonderful.
I knew you'd be happy about
Oh,
that.
thrilled.
Here at Town Hall, we're still closed to the public and having not a full load of staffing. Hopefully that will start revving up by June 15th, but then the public getting into the building probably won't be till in July. And then there might be things where it's by appointment and that type of thing, because we're only limited with the number of people who can actually be in the building at any one time. So I think they're coming out with some other municipal building requirements that we're going to also be taking a look at that. The governor did have a COVID-19 Order 35 that was issued on June 1st that provides some type of relief for zoning requirements for outdoor seating for restaurants, as well as basically cutting out the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission from the process for increasing the change of premise so that people could serve alcohol in these new outdoor areas. So town staff has been working feverish, as I'm sure Liz has as well, coming up, interpreting all of that, processing that, and then coming up with an application form, and then an actual process of how to do that, which will be presented to the Board of Selectmen at their meeting next Tuesday. So hopefully we can get these things processed as quickly as possible. So if restaurants want to open, they can. Right now, restaurants can, once phase 2 starts, it hasn't started yet, they can only serve outdoors until some later date in the latter end of phase 2, where indoor seating will start being allowed. Again, it's all going to be with social distancing, so the occupancy load inside the building will be significantly different. But that's kind of the fun stuff that's been going on at Town Hall.
So,
Kathy,
I have,
Kathy, I just wanted to mention that I'll forward a copy of the email I got from Mary, so you'll have the language of,
Oh, that would be great.
for those items.
Okay, upcoming meetings, June 17th. Kathy, do we have anything?
I have nothing right now.
Okay. And July 1st?
Here, I say I have nothing. Andrew had talked about if we need to get an amended VCOD. I think likely it would be the July 1st meeting. I don't see how they can submit something to us, go through design review and get it to you guys for this meeting on the 17th.
Right, yeah.
So the July 1st will probably be the amendment to the VCOD site plan review for that project.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
All right,
quick
motion to
question.
adjourn?
I just have one quick question. I apologize. I've got to recuse and I'll sit in, but Mr. Barron, if you recuse from the planning board, can you sit on the Board of Appeals?
Say again?
If you recuse, I don't know the rules. I've never had a ZBA member on the planning board. So this is all new to me, even after 20 years. or
Sure.
25 years, whatever.
I can't be on as a permanent member. I'm only on as an alternate. In other words, because I'm on planning, I can't be on zoning in a permanent status or a full status. I can only
Okay.
be in as an alternate. And
All right,
I've had many occasions to be there. The regular members have not been forthcoming to answer the call of the zoning board. So being an alternate, I've wound up being helping make a quorum, and that's the only reason why I joined as an alternate was to help move the business of the ZBA forward.
So Tom, technically you shouldn't have sat on that meeting.
No, Sean,
Can I just be clear? Sean's issue was that he had voted to recommend the zoning board of appeals relief. So he felt he had already made a decision on an application he hadn't reviewed yet. And when he
Yeah.
said it, I was like, yeah, that makes
John
sense.
didn't think I could take part in an unbiased conversation, and in actuality, I think I should take exception to that because whether I had information before or not shouldn't have made an issue. But John asked me to be off, so I was off.
Have you gotten just a justification or talk to the state about that for ethics to make sure that you can or can't do that? Because it's a public meeting, all the information as far as us, and they have that information. You're not privy to anything special.
Agreed. And I'm not sure whether or not I should make an issue with town council or elsewhere right now. But yeah, it's something that has been in the back of my mind.
Even with Tom, I don't think it was a case where it would have passed.
Years back, Brad, you may recall, Steve DeYoung and myself both sat on the ZBA while we were on the planning board. And the reason being is they approached us and asked if we would be interested because they couldn't find residents to serve on the ZBA. So we did that for a while. And then notice came down from the selectmen that wouldn't be allowed anymore. So we lost our second job. But anyway, many times we had to recuse ourselves relative to the information that came before us.
got it. Thank you.
Okay,
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions.
absolutely.
One for Kathy. What is the process when a restaurant wants to have outside seating?
Normally, they have to do a change of premise form with the ABCC and get them to approve it. And then it comes back to the town and they have to have a public hearing. You have to have a butter notification. It's like a 2 to 3 month process at best. So a lot of towns, including Barnstable and Falmouth and Yarmouth, all sent in a letter to the governor saying, we really need you to do some type of legislative relief. It ended up being done through an executive order by the governor, but I think the legislature is trying to back that up because there was some question as to whether he had truly has the power to have done what he did.
Yeah.
So this process would be much simpler. We'd have to talk about it's a joint. We'd have a joint application that would go to the building department with regard to zoning, because he technically, if the Board of Selectmen gives it to him and there's a process in place, could issue variances from the zoning bylaw in order to maybe locate a tent, within a setback or something along those lines on a case-by-case basis. So there needs to be an application form and then an actual decision that would need to get clocked in with the town clerk if it's a variance. For the alcohol, it would be the same application. It would just go to the Board of Selectmen. There would be an administrative review from staff from like health department, fire, police, and licensing, and our comments would go to both Mark, the building commissioner, for his decision, as well as to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration in issuing the extension of the premises so people could serve alcohol outside of their building or expand it. Some people already have outside alcohol service.
So this is not something that's going to happen immediately. It's something that the restaurants are going to have to go through some kind of a process. It's going to take a couple weeks.
Yes, there'll be a process. Hopefully the Board of Selectmen are happy with what we've done on Tuesday, and the business community gets in it's a 2-page application. We do need a sketch plan to kind of show us what you're doing, so we know where it's going to go. And you might need a tent permit if it's a certain size. That's building code. We can't vary that. But we're going to try and do it as quick as we can. The Board of Selectmen very clearly last night did not want a long drawn out process. They wanted things to move quickly, but we also need to maintain public safety and make sure that nothing's being done that would impact safety and health.
Kathy, we used to be able to do, Bob Lawton we would put forward a Section 14 license that is a temporary license to tie over until the ABCC would approve the actual physical real deal one. So there are options that you can tie over. So during the public hearing, you can have both applications. Just check with the state though, because I've heard one way that they'll say, okay, that's approved, that's acceptable. And then I've heard others saying, no, that's not acceptable. But we did it. We would do it occasionally. We've done it in the past, so I'm not saying that it was right, but we did it. So
hopefully there'll be no comparison with regard to the timeline, and doing it with this executive order will go much faster. Honestly, Tracy wanted to start scheduling meetings with businesses on Monday or Tuesday. So she's ready to go, and I think Eric's ready to go. They're all ready to help the businesses as much as they can to move this through as quickly as possible. And I know that Mark, the building commissioner, has already been meeting with numerous businesses who are interested in installing a tent and have actually started the tent permit process. And he's gone out and told them where their underground utilities are, so you might not want to put the spike for the tent in that. So there's a lot of things to really think about that a lot of businesses aren't. They're like, oh, they're in a frenzy to get it all done, and it needs to be a little bit more thoughtful for their benefit, so there's no damage to their properties.
Parking spaces, all of that good stuff.
Parking spaces, yep.
And if anyone's been by the 28 diner within the last week, 10 days, Tom Nicanello has been out there building a new patio for the 28 diner.
He has the resources and the skills, so.
Good luck to you and Liz. I tell you, you guys got your hands full.
It's been fun.
God bless both of you.
Thank you.
Okay,
So, Mr. Chairman, I had one other item that I wanted to plug.
sure.
Apparently, the warrant is going to provide for an item for $5 million for money for design to work on the sewer program phase 1. And also, this is in conjunction with the DOT's projects along 28. So it's money put into play to get this part of phase 1 started and in the design phase. And the only other thing that I would tell you is behind the scenes, there are some issues. I don't want to say exactly what they are at this point because it's not public information, but it's something that the Water Advisory Committee is probably eventually going to take up soon. And has to do with the DHY proposal. And right now, of course, the town is delaying putting the DHY question on the warrant. And there are a number of good reasons for that, specifically the COVID-19 has kind of interrupted our little schedule here. But maybe we'll be looking at something in the fall on that.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Any other comments? Roll call vote, motion to adjourn. Brad,
So moved.
Liz,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Joanne,
Yes.
Tom,
I
aye.
Who-
Thank
who's-
you all so
who-
much.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Thank you, Liz. You're awesome.
All right.
I heard her.
I didn't hear that. Thank you, Liz.
I was on mute.
I wasn't looking at you.
Happy
All right.
anniversary.
All right,
All right,
guys.
stay
Thank you
safe,
so
everyone.
much.
Hey,
Okay. Take care.
be
Bye-bye.
good.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Kathy.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
As
Kev.
always, thank you.